Finding and developing all these two-way forwards that the Sabres seem to prize so much is one thing. Keeping them healthy, that's another thing entirely. I think we've heard it all offseason, and I think we're to the point that we're tired of hearing it. The Sabres constantly saying that they have to be tougher to play against, they have to be more responsible defensively, they have to be more physical, they have to just, in general, make life more difficult for the opposition. If I were to name a player who most represents this philosophy and most embodies kind of what the Sabres want, especially in their bottom six forwards, you'd have to kind of cut out a picture of Jordan Greenway and just kind of stick it on your screen, and that would be what the Sabres basically want their two-way forwards to look like. And so in today's video, we're going to be looking at Jordan Greenway, his career up to this point, and what has made him so valued by the Buffalo Sabres front office to the point where they gave him a 2-year, $8 million contract where he's going to be making $4 million a year just to be basically a third-line grinder. Make no mistake, if he's healthy, Jordan Greenway is very much poised to be an important part of the Sabres' 2025-2026 season. But what has made him so sought after, and why does he seem to fit what the Sabres want to do so well? So let's take a look at Jordan Greenway. Jordan Greenway was drafted in the 2015 NHL Draft, 50th overall, by the Minnesota Wild. Up till that point, he was playing in the USHL for the U.S. National Junior Team. Over 2 years in the USHL, he played 55 games, scored 15 goals, had 31 assists for a total of 46 points and plus-minus of +9. He wasn't a point-per-game player, but his size and speed made him an interesting prospect worthy of a second-round selection by the Minnesota Wild that year. Speaking of his size, Jordan Greenway now stands 6'6", 231 pounds. He's a left or right wing who shoots left, and he's currently 28 years old. At that time, even though probably not as big as he is now, whether or not he'd finished growing, he certainly had the frame for what he would become, and that made him an intriguing prospect despite his lack of offense. You know, usually in the juniors, you want to see guys who are scoring at least a point per game, if not more, to get drafted in the first 2 rounds. Jordan Greenway didn't do that, even at a lower level of junior hockey in the USHL. So it's maybe a little surprising that he went even in the second round. But again, that size and skating ability made him tantalizing for the Wild. Following the draft, Greenway would report to BU, Boston University, where he'd play 3 seasons of collegiate hockey for a traditional hockey power. Over 3 years at BU, he played 112 games. He scored 18 goals, had 64 assists for 92 points. His plus-minus was +34 in his time at Boston University. He also accumulated during that time 192 penalty minutes over the 3 years. So though he wasn't exactly offensively gifted, he could function well as a physical, shut-down forward that was very difficult to play against. And he could still contribute a little bit offensively, though I don't believe that was ever going to be the expectation in the NHL. Maybe chip in here or there, but basically just be a physical powerhouse that could skate well and could shut guys down. It's really interesting to me that after his collegiate season ended in 2017-2018, he reported directly to the Minnesota Wild, not to the AHL. Typically, you see these prospects, they finish college, then they go to the AHL, then they finish the season there, maybe play in the playoffs if that team is good. But in this case, he reported directly to the Minnesota Wild, played 6 regular season games, he had an assist during that time, and then I guess they thought highly enough of his contributions, they threw him right into the fire and made him play in the NHL playoffs. In that series, which was an eventual 5-game loss to Winnipeg, he scored his first professional goal and added an assist for good measure, so he contributed 2 points and played in all 5 of Minnesota's playoff games in that short-lived playoff run. In 2018-19, Greenway would play almost a full season, 81 games for Minnesota, which is still his career-high games in a season, and he scored 12 goals, had 12 assists, and had 24 points, but his overall plus-minus was -12. I think he was really still adjusting to the NHL in that year, finding what would work and what wouldn't work at that level. He also played some games down in the AHL that year as well. He actually played more than 82 games in that season, just how the schedule worked out. But his AHL contributions were limited. 2019-20 would be Jordan Greenway's best season in the NHL. He scored 8 goals, had 20 assists for 28 points. He had a plus-minus of 2, and he did this across 67 games. Additionally, his advanced comparative metrics for the first time went positive. So he was a complete performer across the board, up to scratch with his peers. He was able to generate a plus-minus of 2 despite, again, only putting up 28 points. He was a good defensive contributor, and he continued to improve on that the next year in 2020-2021. In 56 games that year, he had 6 goals, 26 assists, 32 points, plus-minus of 5. So he was able to contribute offensively a little bit. You don't need these guys to contribute offensively, but the fact he had 26 assists that year shows that he was able to actually move the puck around, not just hit people, but move the puck around and contribute a little bit offensively while still being responsible defensively. As we talked about in the last video, possession score is your takeaways minus your giveaways, gives you a plus-minus as far as your possession change score. And up to this point in his career, he had achieved 93 takeaways against 70 turnovers, so he had achieved a plus 23 score over his first really 3 seasons in the NHL. But looking at it from a total forward perspective, 2021-2022 was Greenway's best season by far. He had 10 goals, 17 assists, 27 points. That doesn't jump off the page. In fact, it's fewer points than he had the previous year. But he had a plus-minus of plus 26, and his advanced metrics were in the positive or neutral as well. So you take all that information, his positive possession change score, his ability to hit, his ability to block shots, he can contribute a little bit offensively, his plus-minus has been sterling, his advanced metrics are neutral, they're not negative. So at that point, I mean, his value, his stock had never been higher. And the Wild rewarded him at this point with a 3-year, $9 million deal. Unfortunately, the year after getting the contract was not very kind to Greenway. In his 45 games he played with the Wild, he fell off a cliff in terms of his metrics, heavily in the minus on the comparative metrics side, and he only tallied 7 points in those 45 games. The Wild at that time, thinking about their cap and trying to get a little bit of money moved, trying to pick up some value in the draft for the future, they traded Greenway to the Sabres for a 2023 second-round pick and a 2024 fifth-round pick. A bit surprising, right? The Sabres typically like those picks, but the Sabres also knew they needed to add, like they've always been trying to do recently to limited effect, add some defense, add some toughness, add some kind of veteran presence to the roster. So, after the trade, Greenway would play 17 games for the Sabres, scoring 4 goals with no assists. And, you'd look at that whole year, right? He played 45 games in Minnesota. He played 17 games in Buffalo, so 62 combined games. He had a combined stat line of 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 points, terrible comparative metrics. But he only had a plus-minus of -6, and he was blocking shots, and he was hitting people. So he was still defensively, his defensive play was still passable, even though the offensive numbers and the comparative stats weren't there. He still would have a role on the team. In 2023-24, playing entirely for the Sabres, Greenway had a bit of a renaissance. He had his third 10-goal season of his career with 10 goals, 18 assists, 28 points, and he was plus 11 on not a great Sabres team over 67 games. However, Greenway, especially in Buffalo, as we're going to get to, is a very, very physical player. And when you play so physically, injuries are always going to be a problem and a concern. And last year, he was bit very much by the injury bug. Limited by injuries, Greenway only played 34 games for the Sabres last season. He scored 3 goals, had 5 assists, 8 points, and a -4 overall. His advanced metrics were in the negative, but not so much so. And over his career, his advanced metrics have basically started off neutral and have gradually trended more towards the negative side as he's gotten older, with the exception being the disastrous 2022-2023 season where his advanced metrics fell off a cliff. Despite this, his possession score had stayed positive throughout his career, but last season, in that limited 34 games of action, was really, really bad. Last year, in those 34 games, he only had 7 takeaways against 23 giveaways, which gave him a minus 16 score last year. His career score is still plus 12, but the previous worst year of his career had been minus 2. So for last year to be minus 16, that is a really big fall off. And it shows probably he was not healthy even when he was playing. He probably couldn't skate up to his normal standard, and he probably couldn't move well enough to generate a lot of takeaways. So it might have been related to his injury, so we're going to hold off on judging that too much. Right now, 1 year is just an aberration. Hopefully that's all it is, and it's not a sign of like some kind of greater physical problem. Right now for the Sabres, it seems that Greenway's biggest contribution comes in terms of hitting and comes in terms of blocking shots. And his style of play is a bit different than it was in Minnesota. In Buffalo, he's played 118 games as a Sabre and accumulated 270 hits. That is a hit rate of 2.29 hits per game. In Minnesota, he played 317 games and had 478 hits. So that is a hit rate of 1.51 per game. So he's averaging almost 3/4 of a hit more per game in Buffalo than he was in Minnesota. His block rate has also increased as well. In 118 games for Buffalo, he's blocked 107 shots. That is a .91 per game shot block rate. In Minnesota, he had a .45 per game shot block rate. So the Sabres have definitely asked him to play a more physical style of game in terms of hitting and blocking shots, and he has definitely complied to this point. But if the injuries pile up or he's not completely healthy, you have to wonder if he can continue to play this style. If he can, if Jordan Greenway can give the Sabres a full, complete, healthy season, I think he could very well end up being one of the game's top grinders. He might be near the top of the hit category. He might be near the top of the block shot category for forwards. But that all depends on if he can stay healthy. If he can't stay healthy, Jordan Greenway's little more than a $4 million per year paperweight, so it's not going to get you very much if he isn't on the ice. And also, bringing back the possession issue, hopefully that's just an aberration, but if it is a sign of physical decline, if he is declining a little bit physically, it's going to mean his entire game is going to get a little bit worse, and he's already hit his peak. But I do think that Jordan Greenway has a big role on this team in terms of setting an example for the younger players, in terms of showing guys how to be responsible defensively, how to be physical, and also just from a hockey standpoint, he has a big role in the bottom six as far as being a guy who can eat minutes and shut down the opposition's top line. If he's out, if he misses time, it's going to force a shuffling of the bottom six, which could affect the projected production of guys like Doan or Krebs or Danforth on the bottom line. Someone's going to have to move up, and it could force those forwards out of a more offensive role because someone's going to have to step up to block those shots. Someone's going to have to step up to get those hits, and it could cause the bottom six to be much less offensively inclined than it otherwise would be. Again, your first role on the bottom six is do no harm, play good defense. If you have a guy who specializes in that, who is an expert, it frees everyone else up to be a little bit more offensive. And as long as you can still be responsible defensively, that's great. But if you lose a guy like Greenway and you lose that defensive contribution, then everyone else has to step up their defensive game. And it's going to mean, in general, secondary scoring on the team is going to decrease, which in general is going to mean that total scoring on the team is going to heavily decrease. So even though Greenway is not scoring the goals, he frees other guys up to be able to score the goals because of his defensive contributions. Losing him, loses minutes, loses hits, loses block shots, which hurts the team as a whole. So I do think, in my opinion, that it was a bit of an overpay to give him $4 million per year, coming off of an injury-riddled season where his giveaway numbers were so high. I have some concerns that it might just not be an aberration, that he could be in a type of physical decline. I worry maybe he's always going to have nagging injuries for the rest of his career, particularly with his style of play, so he might not see the ice all that much. Fortunately, the contract is only 2 years, but maybe that's money that could have been spent elsewhere. However, for the Sabres' philosophy, Jordan Greenway makes a lot of sense because he is the exact archetype of player they are trying to grow in every one of their forwards. They're trying to make every forward have a little mini Jordan Greenway in their game. So to have him on the team helps a lot. Even if it's not in the capacity of playing, even if it's in the capacity of just being a voice on the team, he's able to help guys hopefully refocus their play to be more two-way, more defensive, as that is what the coaches in the front office seem to want. That's Jordan Greenway. Hopefully he can have an impact for the Sabres this year. He's definitely a type of glue guy you kind of want to have one or two of on your team. But what do you think about him? Do you think he's going to be healthy this year? Do you think the Sabres were right to give him the largest contract of his career because he was signed during an injury-riddled campaign, knowing full well he might not be able to come back to full strength? Was that a good decision? Would you have rather seen that $4 million spent elsewhere, maybe part of a package to get a higher tier player? What do you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so if you have something to say, please leave a comment down below. So thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you want more Sabres content, please subscribe to the channel. We have lots more coming as the season gets closer. So thanks for watching. As always, go Sabres. Bye-bye.